Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Our government, any government, is there to solve problems that we can't solve on an individual basis. National defense, for example, the farmers are not going to go take their pitchforks or their rifles or whatever. This is where it is. It's designed. Our government is designed to solve problems. The pandemic, for example, is too big for one individual to handle. So it takes everybody working together to make it happen. And then we have our lives to live. So ideally speaking, we turn responsibility over to our government, but the power is still derived from the people. Okay. The problem is when a crisis occurs, this is like a crisis in the family segment right here in the planning process. Okay, so when a crisis occurs, then what you have to do is you have to come up with a plan. Okay, so if you don't have let's say that you have a crisis and people are protesting, that's why people have to have a voice in their government, is because when people are standing up and protesting and they have no voice, then the government is not solving problems. So basically what we're doing right now is we're looking at this kind of idea about having a voice in your government and then whether or not the government is solving the problems. So there's a back and forth idea. My cat is here. Wanted my attention for a little bit. Okay, so there's a back and forth idea between equality, crisis in the family, and up here. So what are people protesting now with the LGBT movement? They're saying we're not treated equally to other people. So what is the plan that the government is coming up with? Is it something that's going to take away their rights more? People will stand up and protest that they don't have their unalienable rights. When people are angry at the government, if they're denied a voice, then that's when terrorism comes about. So we're looking at domestic terrorism. We're looking at the idea of having a voice, the unalienable right to have a voice in your government, because the power is coming from the people. It's not coming from the government in a trickle-down idea. It's this back and forth motion, and whether or not our government is standing on the unalienable rights that we have as people. We also have solutions. And if they're not listening to the solutions, we know the people have the right to offer ideas for legislation. And if the government officials go in with the idea that they are going to just force through their agenda and they're not going to listen to the people, that's when the government, when they are not listening and they're forcing through their agenda, that's tyranny. When they become unstoppable, that is a tyrannical government. And that is kind of where we are right now, is when with our government, with Donald Trump saying that he's not going to have a peaceful transfer of power. Our government has to be responsive to the people because of this back and forth motion. And then the government has to think about how are they going to solve the problem. In a previous video, I talked about the storming the mountain idea, that they'll take a plan that our founders stormed the mountain, that they took an idea and then they built on each other's input. And when they did that, instead of saying, we're going to stand on this and we're going to stand on this, and there's no middle ground here, and we have the majority, so we are going to say that's where people stand up and protest within the government too, because they represent the people. The majority party says, I'm not going to listen to you at all. I'm going to force through my agenda, and you're just playing power games. That's when you have the abuse of power, when our government is not. And compromise isn't the solution, because what happens is that they're giving away something that is desirable when basically you have to compromise. You have to give something to get something, and that doesn't work. That's why storming the mountain, everybody is sharing in the information, in the input of the solution. An example, and the same thing happens in a family. if your parents are like the father or the mother is abusive, they're saying we have the right to do everything, we have the power, and you don't have anything. And that's what leads to, let's say, homelessness in a family. When the children feel they don't have a home, they grow up and they create what they fear in their own life, and that's what leads to a lot of times alcoholism, because they're not getting any compassion from their parents and their family. The power games are learned within the family. So that's where we're looking at, is a crisis in the family and having a plan that benefits everyone. If you are in an end-of-life crisis in a family, say somebody is dying, a lot of times what will happen is the people will get together and they're forced to, let's say, find a reconciliation. If there's a financial crisis, people will come together and say, I can't do this by myself. I need everybody working together to help me do this. And then the solution is to come up with a plan, like going through the stages of conflict resolution, where everybody, first of all, has to be considered equal. The first requirement for conflict resolution is that everybody has to be considered equal. Crisis in the family, equality. Are people being treated fairly and equally? It's one thing to be a parent, but are you listening to what your kids are saying? If your kids are rebelling, are they growing up, or are they protesting unfair treatment? If one child has all the benefits and the other child gets none, we're not all Harry Potter who can go off and go to Hogwarts school and become magicians. We don't, wizards. It's kind of like, we're not all able to escape from an oppressive family situation. Okay, so now what we're looking at is conflict resolution, and that has to do with this segment, security. Now, I don't have this all together, so I just wanted mostly to talk about this. But conflict resolution, when there's no equality, then you're dealing with conflict resolution. And that is like also coming up with a plan, because this is not the circle. There's elements of conflict resolution along with coming up with a plan. With conflict resolution, when you have like the end of life crisis in a family, people are coming together and they have to deal with the issues. I mean, this is a topic that's found in a lot of movies, and people can appreciate that even if not, that hasn't happened in your own family. You can appreciate that idea. People have to reconcile the ideas. People have to all assume responsibility for their part in this. Then they have to everybody has to work together to come up the middle ground, find the middle ground. They're all responsible, and then they all have to come up with a plan, and then they all have to work on it to make it happen. If one person says, okay, we've come up with a plan, now you do it, I'm going on vacation, that doesn't work either. So that's kind of like, right at this moment, Ted Cruz is getting basically mocked, and he's getting put down by people because he took off. There was a crisis in the family with the cold weather and people dying of the extreme cold temperatures down in Texas, and then he goes off to Cancun. Was that solving the problem? Did he solve the problem? And then what did he say? Okay, now I'm out of this, I can go. What are the optics of it? These stages of conflict resolution are important, whether they're part of the family end-of-life crisis or how a government functions to solve problems. Okay, now the other thing is the government coming up with solutions that benefit everyone? The plan in conflict resolution, when you come up with conflict resolution, the plan that you come up with has to benefit everybody. Okay, and treat everybody fairly and equally. So now, think about any crisis that our government is coming up with. It becomes the rationale, you could say, for a plan. The crisis in the family becomes the rationale for a plan. then what you have to do is you have to come up with, you have three choices. Is it going to be like heaven, hell, or purgatory? Are they going to come up with a plan that benefits everyone? Are they going to come up with a plan that benefits nobody? It's going to be like an abuse of power, or like coming up with, how about we'll talk about the economic crisis situation with tax cuts, okay? And then what happens is purgatory is ignoring the crisis, passing it on to future generations, and the future generations, it takes 7 generations to undo the damage that's been done. That's one of the things about the curse of the generations in the Bible. That's the story in the Bible. It takes 7 generations to undo the damage that happened. The main problem with that is that with these two here, passing it on to future generations, and also going down into the power games, which benefit nobody, are oppressive and benefit nobody, what happens is now these two things are going down into the power games, or ignoring the crisis, you end up in the abyss. Okay, we have a problem in our government now. I'm going to say we have a crisis in the family situation, and that we have, Donald Trump has gone down into the power games, and we really are not recognizing, we're not always seeing the existing structure based on the Democrats solving the problems either, because they can pass it on to future generations. If your plan doesn't address the root cause of the problem, then basically it makes the crisis worse. It goes this way. It either goes this way or this way. Now, the only thing that works is to come up with like conflict resolution. We're looking at these two ideas and the plan. What only works is when you do what's in everyone's best interest. Now, think about this for a minute. When Donald Trump got into office, he promised that he was going to do what was, he was going to make America great again. And the Republicans were thinking prosperous. He's the guy who knows how to make money. I'm really rich, he said. Okay, so now he's saying, this is the illusion that he's going to, I know business, I know how to do things, I know how to make everybody rich. I'm going to apply the same principles to our economy, and I'm going to make America prosperous again. I'm going to bring back all those companies that are over there. I'm going to solve the trade problem with China. I'm going to do all these. So he started a trade war with China. Is that up, down, or straight ahead? Okay, so when you look at policies, the principles that we look at are based on the idea of up, down, or straight ahead. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something. So Donald Trump, I'm going to share an idea about going up based on the 7 principles of universal law. Okay, this is how you can tell whether it's up. So Donald Trump is saying, I'm going to start a trade war with China, and I'm going to equalize all that stuff. And then I'm not an expert on, I personally am not an expert on economics, but I understand the principles of everybody has to benefit from something. I know that if the top 1% if the income inequality shifts to the top 1%, what happens is that there is no trickle down idea. That is a misunderstanding, that it's kind of like a lie. And the reason for it is, it seems like it would work, but people equate money and power, and nobody ever gets rid of power voluntarily. Nobody ever lets go of their money voluntarily. It just is something that, why would they give money to people? And I know that the Democrats are working hard, but that's because they're trying to keep the economy from going stagnant. They're applying the money, but it's not always based on the root cause. So you have the Republicans and the Democrats coming up with different ideas, and you can't throw money at it, and we have to throw money at it, but you can't throw money at it. You're wasting our money, and so So what they did was, originally they came down with the idea, and Bush did the same thing. He had his tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. And when Bush got out of, he shifted the money towards the wealthy. He said, and Trump did the same thing. The Republicans are saying we have to stand on the if we give it to the rich, that didn't work for Robin Hood. Give it to the rich and it'll trickle down to the poor. Hey, that didn't work. So what will work is to come up with plans where you build on each other's, you storm the mountain, you build on each other's ideas, and then you come up and it has to stand on the principles, the 7 principles of universal law. In my letter to the Supreme Court, I said there's 3 levels of the legal system. There's universal law, which pegs our country on a very high level. This founding father said, we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Okay, unalienable means you can't take them away without undermining your own, without facing the backlashes of it. We are endowed by our Creator, universal law. Okay, so to create the life we want without interference, to be treated fairly and equally, and to have a voice in our government. Those are the 3 main ones, but there are others too. Okay. So we're looking at this idea. Now, so what would be an economic policy that stands on the principles of universal law, allows our country to function on a higher level? Okay, so we have up, down, or straight ahead. Is it going to shift the income equality towards the wealthy? Is it going to ignore the crisis, not based on the solution? Or is it going to treat everybody based on those equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance? So everybody has to function from their own capacity. My cat is grabbing me again. And she has one very sharp claw that she loves to get my attention with. Okay, then we have, so it has to stand on all 7 of those principles. We have to base it on our capacity. We have to base it on treating everybody equally, which is weird. Give do you do that when you have homeless people and people like Bill Gates who have so much money? How do you treat people equally? How do you give everybody their rights? Liberty is our rights, which is unusual because you look at the people at the CPAC and talking about rights and freedom, calling out rights and freedom. Okay, rights, and yet they're taking away rights. Okay, now that's abuse of power. We're looking at those things don't match. Then what happens is freedom. I call it ELF-CAT. Equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance. Okay, now, so is it a tax cut that shifts all the income toward the top 1%, and the bottom 1%, bottom 99% have absolutely nothing, and the bottom 1% have absolutely nothing at all, and don't trust anybody because they're being totally screwed. Okay, and to be honest, I have been down in the 1% myself because when I introduced the plan for world peace, my family just went. I've been squeezed out of my job when my daughter was born, and I tried to get my books published, and I couldn't do it. My books were rejected by the publisher, and then I ended up being homeless for a long time. I had no job. I had I had a daughter, and I was homeless. But what happened then is that I had to start to apply this information in my own life to be able to get out of my crisis. And now I'm almost back to the point where I'm functioning from equal to everybody else. Abundance. I have my abundance because I have my books. I have my capacity. I'm functioning as a channel. I'm doing the things that I can do based on these principles, and it's working. So if it can work for me, it can also work for anybody else. I'm functioning on a very low level, but also on a very high level. This is my shipping department here for my books to the independent members. I wanted to share today a U.S. economic stimulus plan. Basically, our first economic stimulus plan is the exit strategy for Iraq. It is basically, it shuts down the drain on our economy to the Middle East. That has been, at the height of the Iraq War, we were spending $1 billion a week on the war. That's a lot of money to spend on a war where we were in a quagmire, and there was no exit strategy whatsoever. So that's why they had to come up with a surge. It didn't work very well. We're still kind of in the quagmire now, and Joe Biden isn't necessarily coming up with the right solutions because he's not doing what's in anyone's best interest. Bombing another country when there's a world peace plan on the table is not the solution. Okay, but back to the economy. So the exit strategy is actually, it takes disputes off the table, puts it into a court system, and the rest of us can go on and live our lives. If we can let based on international law, we can let the JAGs, the international attorneys, we can let them, the military attorneys, we can let them, instead of waging war and spending $1 billion a week on war, we can just not do that. If the government has a crisis, then they have to come up with a plan that benefits everyone. Is bombing Syria a solution? No, it isn't. Okay, so now what happens with the economy, though, is there is a plan besides that. Individuals don't see the benefits of it unless they're talking about, well, they're going to pull the troops back and whatever that can be kind of a problem. What are we going to do with all the troops? Got a plan for that too. And that is, well, you can see that later. But I wanted to share with you one of our economic stimulus plans called Lift the Public. Under this plan, it benefits everyone. It treats everybody fairly and equally. It benefits everyone. And from the top 1% to the bottom 1%, the homeless and the people on Social Security, the people who have no income whatsoever and are not capable of doing it, basically it benefits everyone. It doesn't cost anything to do. Our government can solve the problem with the economy with this plan, besides the exit strategy for Iraq. But this Lift the Public plan is something that let me share with you how this works. I love this plan. Okay, under this plan, any business can become partially tax exempt. Okay, based on the 501c3 charitable plan. How it works is that merchants set two prices for their goods and services. And as I sell books. I have a bookstore, basically, an online bookstore. I'm a publisher, and what it does is I'm considered a Lift the Public business now. This goes forward, it's solves problems. Okay, so any business can set two prices for their goods and services. And the more expensive one, like $1 more or $2, it depends. The merchant can do anything. The extra money goes. The customer decides. The consumer decides what price to pay. The higher price, if they pay the higher price, the difference goes to the Lift the Public plan. Okay, so basically, the government doesn't decide this, it's the consumer. So when there's a situation where somebody has more wealth, they can share it with other people. And when they don't have it, it kind of evens it out. Okay. then the lower price is taxed the way it normally is. So it's just the flow to the government doesn't really get changed at all. That extra money goes to the Lift the Public plan. So you're basically deciding where your tax money goes. Okay? Then what happens is the program is designed to help people set up the Lift the Public program in their own community. The money kind of stays in the community and then helps to set up the program there. But I can, as a Lift the Public person, I can take my vendor list, the people that I buy my goods and services from, my suppliers, I can offer that plan to them, and it goes out like exponentially. I have like 30 vendors that I work with. I have like these boxes that I get from Uline. Okay, I'm not advertising them. This is not something. I'm just telling you, I have these people that I order things from. I get my paper. I go to my local big box store. I go here. Reason I'm bringing that up is because it's here, and you probably have seen this box. Okay, but I have other people that I work with too. I buy my paper, and I have other things. I have like 30 or 40 vendors that I work with, and then they have they're welcome to participate in the program too. So our government then, it's like tax breaks for all these different companies. So if I need paper, if I need my supplies like my shipping boxes, I can get them from here. I can get them from, and that company is able to participate in the plan too. So where do they get their supplies that they need? It goes out. It just keeps on going out and spreading and spreading. Benefits everyone. So if I want to buy these again, I have my choice between getting them for $1 more, or however much they decide to make it, or lower, and that way that community where they are gets to start this idea in their own community too, and it just goes out and out and out. I can offer it to them, and then the federal government just makes them partially tax exempt. They can apply for this tax exemption with the government, and so can I. That's how it works. So the other thing is that merchants a lot of times have goods and services that, if they, let's say they're going through some rocky times, but they have goods and services that they can, let's say, donate to a Lift the Public shop. Okay, so let's say I go to my local store and I find a clothing store. I find something on sale that's marked down over and over again. And what would happen if, instead of just marking it down and they're losing their money, they're going down to what they paid for it with no profit whatsoever? It's eating into their profit, or cutting services like a nursing home, possibly cutting services. You know, what happens if they take their goods at the end of the season and donate it to a Lift the Public shop where it's given out free to people? Now there's limits to what it is. You can't come in and you can't just take a whole bunch and then resell it. If that happens, then that's not legal. You know, but if you are let's say a homeless person and you don't have clothes, and you can all you have is like the shirt on your back, and you have a job interview or whatever, you always have clothes that you can wear. You can always have food that people that are, coming down to the point where they are going to be turned into landfill problems. Okay, so we can, it's easier to recycle things that are basically not necessarily good. This might cause a problem with places like Goodwill, but I think people will always be donating things, and people will always be looking for things and supporting things. So if they start this idea, then it can also help people start. If there's enough support, it can help people start small businesses too, and based on this plan, coming up with this idea. And that's one of the things that we're going to be working on too in our crisis centers, setting them up around the country. So that is the Lift the Public plan is an example of a government proposal that benefits everyone, that stands on all 7 of those principles. It treats everybody fairly and equally. Anybody can run a business. Anybody can start their own business, and anybody can be part of the plan. Everybody benefits from it, the consumers and the merchants and the service providers. It doesn't leave anybody out. The homeless people are able to get goods and services. It benefits the merchants to donate things to that group. They can pay money into it instead with the dollars or merchandise. So if they have, normally they would pay like 25, 35, 40% of their income into taxes. That's not something that I have a lot of awareness about in terms of what other companies are doing. I'm a very small business owner. I was working as a dental hygienist, and all my money, I made 40% of what I made for my boss. Now I'm learning how to be a business person myself, and this is something that a lot of YouTubers and other people, GoDaddy people who start their own small businesses and want to make a cash flow. Okay, see, it's the idea of making a cash flow based on your own capacity, and it's basically benefits everyone. If you're a landowner and you have real estate and you rent it out to people, you can also participate in this. If any of your tenants are in that, you can also be part of this program. And all of this is explained in this brochure. I gave this to my congressman. I don't know whether he's willing to go this way yet. I'm not asking you to contact your congressman. I'm telling you, and lobby it for it or anything. When I'm doing this, I'm explaining that how your plan has to benefit everyone for it to go up and to be part of this idea. It has to stand on like the 7 principles, and those include conflict resolution, the principles required for conflict resolution, for a sense of abundance, and the faith of the puree. If you go to puree.org, again, that explains the planning process and about the power games that are played with each of the 7 major religions. If you put the 7 major religions in here, basically you can see that this is also Christianity. This is Christianity, and this is Islam right here. Islam, Prophet Muhammad taught the principles of equality. And when crisis in the family, and when people are not standing on the principles then of equality, then they stand up and protest. And if they don't have a voice, then that's what leads to acts of terrorism. So is this... Now, one final question that I wanted to bring up, when the other thing is acts of revenge and the power games associated with revenge that governments play. If you are denying somebody a voice, like voter suppression, we are going to stay in power with voter suppression. It's kind of like saying that you'd think that they would work to solve the problems that the minorities are facing. Okay. Instead, it seems like it's a backward idea. Okay. Now, but one issue, like I said before, was the issue of ISIS and Al Qaeda Okay, what power games were associated with ISIS and what power games were associated with Al-Qaeda? Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization. And all they had to do was to solve that problem, was to offer them a voice. And this is what happened with, was it Hamas or Hezbollah? They brought them in and became part of the government, and the terrorist organization became like a political party. Okay, so because they had a voice. Okay, opening a dialogue solves a problem. But what happens if you open a dialogue and there is no solution to that? It doesn't solve the problem. That's because there are two power games associated with weaving illusion. One is slavery, and one is genocide. So when people are telling lies, weaving this illusion, it's either a genocide occurring or slavery and human rights violations. So this is where my cat is right now. This is where we are as a country right now. We are facing a major crisis, and the truth doesn't overcome the lie. So the exit strategy for Iraq, it creates a protocol for this. And we're looking at revenge, how it works and why it doesn't work, because two of the power games associated with revenge are based on weaving an illusion. So we have to unravel the illusion, and what unravels the illusion is universal law. And I'll go into that in another video. That's all I wanted to talk about today. I've talked long enough. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. Okay?